express our praise and gratitude to Allah Ta'ala. We seek blessings upon the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So, the question that I left you with was, how do we explain suffering?
Is that the kids in the...
How do we explain, for example, the very specific case of a baby that's born addicted to drugs? Okay. And the reason I use this example is because we can say congenital disease, it's out of people's control. But here we're giving an example of someone who is suffering because of the parent's choice, right? And so we give a number of examples, that this is a test for the baby, this is a test for the parents. Hopefully it'll lead them to Allah Ta'ala. And ultimately, what are we saying here? This is sort of now where we're picking up with new material. We're saying that this life is not fair. Okay? This life, if you do not include akhirah, is not fair. That there will be people who will suffer because of the choice of other people, and they won't get compensation in this life. Okay? There will be people who will get away with causing other people to suffer, and they won't have to pay for it in this life. Okay? Or we might suffer because of a natural disaster. Okay? And so the point is that if I do not include akhirah, this world is not fair. And this is both a simple point, but it's a very heavy point, because every tradition wrestles with this, right? Whether it's religious tradition, philosophical tradition. So some of us will take the idea of karma, what goes around comes around, right? Do we have a concept of karma in our tradition? Generally speaking, no, but there is a hadith. Okay, when you're learning through the tradition, the first hadith you usually are taught is basically, we're being told, okay, people, be merciful to those on earth, and the one in heaven will be merciful to you. Okay? That's the simplest reading of this. And essentially, those who do not show mercy will not be shown mercy. So we do have a bit of that belief, that if I do give rahmah, okay, I will receive rahmah. Okay? If I don't give rahmah, I'm not going to receive rahmah. And you can understand this a few ways. Actually, I think that's the other door.
That's the other door over there?
Good. Okay. So one point to understand is this world's not fair, but there is a notion of the consequence of
There's like 18 children here.
Yeah.
It's great.
We know who's all these children
Right?
are, correct? Some other random children someone else.
It's like
Yeah.
play hours.
Okay. Someone explain to me how. That if I show mercy, I will be shown mercy. If I do not show mercy, I will not be shown mercy. Somebody explain it to me. How does that work?
Isn't there like an example in one of the hadiths where, I'm not sure who it was, but she was pregnant and she was like craving like anar, and then he gave it away, but they got 10 instead. Do you know what I'm talking
Maybe. I'm not familiar with this. But,
about? No?
there might be. Anybody
Do you know
familiar
what I'm
with this?
talking about?
Okay.
Okay, so I don't know if it was, I think it was the person who was married to Ali.
You mean Fatima?
Yes, okay, just making sure. Okay, I didn't want to say something wrong.
Yeah,
But she was like really craving anar, and then Ali went to go get some, and then he bought it or whatever, but then he saw these poor people and he gave it to them instead, and he came home empty-handed. And she's like, oh, where is it? And he's like, oh, I gave it to some poor people. And she was fine, even though, when someone's pregnant, they really crave something. She was like, okay, fine. But then later on, these people came to the door and they said, oh, the Prophet, like, there was extras of this, there's extras of anar, and so he gave them 10 of them. So.
Okay. Well, I mean, this is definitely one way, right? That we are taught that if you give, okay, Allah Ta'ala is not going to decrease any of your savings, and He's going to give you a minimum of 10 to 700, right? That's one way, absolutely. How else does it manifest?
You also think about the person who, I can't remember if the lady was not a Muslim or was not a good Muslim in actions and stuff, but she gave water to a thirsty dog.
Okay.
She showed mercy to this dog. And so they said she'll go to heaven.
Okay, so another way is that if I don't get it in dunya, okay, I'm going to get an akhirah. So what did she get? She got forgiveness, right? Absolutely. Somebody here was raising their hand.
I was. So, I was thinking about this, and I'm not sure if it applies, but sometimes I feel that, like, if you are in a state of mercy, so you show mercy to others, even when people are, like, bad to you, you're still in a state of mercy. You're still receiving mercy because in your eyes, you feel like this person is just so messed up. I feel bad for them, and I'm just so lucky to not be in that state. So it kind of builds upon itself. So when you give mercy upon them, Allah gives you mercy to have the insight to see that you are
Absolutely.
experiencing mercy. I guess.
So this is the third scenario. One scenario is I will see mercy manifest in dunya right in front of me. This is the Anar case. Second is that I will see mercy manifest for me as a result of my mercy in akhirah. But in the first case is actually, this is actually 2, 3. Number 1 is if my interaction with people is one of rahmah, that is going to be how I see the world, and automatically by definition,
That is the mercy.
I'm going to see things as rahmah to me. Right? So what are we saying here? It goes back to that central point, that what I think of Allah Ta'ala will affect how I look at the whole world. If my disposition is rahmah with people, then by definition, I'm going to see whatever Allah Ta'ala gives me as rahmah. If my disposition is not to give rahmah to people, then by definition, that's what I'm going to see from Allah Ta'ala. Okay? That's how my heart is going to respond. Okay? So those exact 3 things, right? What the consequence in my heart, the consequence in the result of my giving in dunya, and the consequence of my result in giving in akhirah, right there. That's karma. We're still saying, however, that this world is not, or that's the Muslim version of karma. That's not even a good way to put it. But we're still saying, however, that this world at the end of the day is not completely fair unless you include the day of judgment. So what happens in our tradition to the baby who dies after non-stop suffering 24/7? What does our belief say?
Straight to heaven.
Straight to paradise. This is also a difference in terms of aqidah. If you compare Sunni aqidah, Sunni theology with Mu'tazila theology. This is a small side point, but it's something that you should know. So all these different schools in Islam, there's schools of law, there's also schools of theology. And so textbook Sunni theology is, all right, if you have no sins, you go straight to paradise. Meaning your default is you're going to paradise, okay? Unless you do things that turn you away from paradise. That's your default, okay? In this movement, this Greek movement, or Greek-inspired movement that was big in the 800s, that is now having a resurgence, the view is that you go where you earn. So what's the answer in that outlook to the baby? Doesn't go to heaven or hell. Which from our perspective is very strange. Yeah.
So, what group amongst the Muslims, are they considered a Muslim or Jamaat, first of all?
So-
and if they are, what group are
Would
they?
you
In
call
terms
it
of
what-
theology, we would say no. In terms of law, they might be Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi, all those things.
Oh,
So you see a resurgence of this in the academic study of Islam.
Mu'tazila, you said?
Mu'tazila, yeah.
Are they still called?
They call themselves people of reason, things like that.
So, Mu'tazila, do they have this purgatory thinking in between, or what?
There's not really an answer, right? So there's this very famous case of Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari, right? Is that him? No, I'm confusing with someone else. But basically, who was Mu'tazila, and then these are the challenges he gave, right? So what do you say about a baby? They say the baby's neither in heaven or hell, okay? Which we would say, well, that's like Catholicism, purgatory, and stuff like that. And then I raised a question last time, okay, which is actually coming from that debate. Well, what about the 80-year-old guy, okay, who says, or the 100-year-old guy who's going to hell, okay, and he complains to Allah Ta'ala, well, why didn't you just take my life when I was 1? What's our answer to that? You get what you earn, right? You're going to get what you earn, okay? And your default state with Allah Ta'ala in our tradition is guidance. We're going to touch this point again later on. It's my misconduct that leads me to misguidance. My default path toward Allah Ta'ala is one of the path of paradise, unless I do things that pull me off the path. Okay?
The little baby, you know.
So here, the baby's going to go to paradise unless somehow the baby was possible, had the intellect to go in the opposite direction, which obviously is not going to happen. Right? Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Isn't there any very clear-cut explanations and evidence that the Mu'tazilites are completely off?
Well, here's how it really plays out. Okay, the real question comes down to how do people use hadith. Okay, if you look at almost every single sectarian group in Islam, take all of them. Okay, the only people who really follow hadith are mainstream Sunnis, mainstream Shias. Okay, and then there's a difference of opinion between mainstream Sunnis and Shias in terms of what hadith are acceptable. Sunnis tend to have a wider dimension of what are acceptable hadith. So if you look at Ismailis, they almost have a vested interest that hadith are fake. Nation of Islam, vested interest that hadith are fake, right? And so Mu'tazila essentially tend to be experts in grammar. Okay, they're interpreting text and they say, okay, God is just, therefore God cannot be non-just. What is the Sunni view? Okay, God is Ar-Rahman. The real meaning of Ar-Rahman is whatever Allah Ta'ala says it is. Okay? And whereas the Mu'tazila says, no, he's merciful, so he has to be merciful every single moment. Okay? We say, that's as far as we understand, but it means whatever he says it means. Okay? But you see what I'm saying? How do we interpret? The Mu'tazila tend to focus only on interpretation through grammar, whereas the Sunnis have the whole body of the Quran, the Prophet, peace be upon him, the Sahaba, the living tradition. Okay. The key point again being that this world, you can't argue very easily that this world is fair unless you include the day of judgment. And then we're saying that when I am on the day of judgment, inshallah, it's inshallah, I'm going to see justice being served. Or mercy. Okay. And when I see what happens to each and every one of you, when each and one of you look at all of our judgments, you're going to see justice being served. Complete justice, right down to the smallest detail. Okay. What does that do to a person's outlook? If I really believe in my heart that I'm getting justice, if not now, then at least later on, how should that affect my behavior?
It'll be different for both. So justice, the person who believes in that is going to be living in fear.
If a person living in which one?
That justice will be served.
Okay.
And a person who is living with the notion that mercy will be served,
okay,
there will be hope.
Okay, but I'm saying even before that, that just if I even have conviction, complete thorough conviction, that justice is going to happen, right? As opposed to someone else who says, no, there's nothing in the afterlife, it's just this life. Yeah.
I was going to say that I think that sometimes what we try to do is we try to like grasp justice in that situation in the dunya, and we run after it knowing that we probably can never achieve it.
Okay.
So if you, in your heart, are able to say, I know that this situation is unfair, but I also know that Allah is all merciful. Therefore, I don't need to worry about getting justice because I will get it because the world is just when, at the end of Akhir. Okay. So what it allows you to do is it allows you to move on from that situation and not become bitter and not focus maybe like on the waswasa of shaitan and to go back to your practice in Islam.
This is a very, very heavy point. That if I truly believe that justice is going to be served, and someone does wrong to me, someone does something wrong to my loved ones, I should have some degree of calm.